Ever since Julia's debut back in Tekken 3, her game plan has remained more or less exactly the same. If you're looking for a relatively simple, yet hard to master character, Julia Chang is a solid pick that'll likely be in future Tekken games, as she hasn't missed one since her first appearance back in Tekken 3. Regarded as a top 5 character in the Tekken community, and for good reason, despite her rather below average play rate. Julia is a very well-rounded character and can do a bit of everything. However, where she truly excels at is by playing in a rush down and poke based playstyle. Her movement is fairly decent with an average backdash and an above average sidestep, which is crucial in her ability to make moves with. She's also blessed with above average combo damage and extremely high wall carry, where she almost always makes the wall and happens to be at her strongest. Some other strengths of hers are that she's well equipped with a complete throw game, good whiff punishing tools, and decent panning tools to escape pressure or to play keep out. Overall, she's a very flexible character and can be played in almost any fashion that'll suit the player's playstyle while not having to worry all too much about bad matchups. When Julia needs to make a comeback, she's forced to do very predictable and unsafe moves. Her lows from standing aren't necessarily scary, meaning she'll have to opt for lows from stances, which are all launch punishable in most matchups. She doesn't have a safe mid launcher like a generic down forward 2 or an orbital, so getting launches must be either with whiff punishes or counter hits. Although, if the opponent doesn't press or isn't near a wall, then Julia is also at a major disadvantage, as she needs her opponent to do something like duck or press to make back major life deficits. Julia doesn't get that many plus frames on blocks, so continuing pressure is unorthodox to say the least, as you'll have to rely on stagger pressure. Julia requires a bit of character knowledge to play her forward one mind game, otherwise she'll end up stepping where she shouldn't or getting counter hit more often than not. Many of Julia's moves are minus 14 on block, meaning she'll get punished rather severely in some matchups if she guesses wrong, and may often than not get launched. Her high crushing moves are also rather lackluster, which affects her party crasher meta quite heavily, as characters like Steve and Paul have moves like back 1, which cover many of her options and are hard to play around. Lastly, newer players might struggle with the unusual inputs of slide motions, shotguns, and forward requirements. Also known as Party Crasher, forward 1 is Julia's main mid poke and serves as a Swiss Army knife, allowing her to bend it to her will according to the situation which it calls for. It's got excellent tracking on neutral, it's her primary tool for starting offense and mind games. It can be extended greatly to improve the range, making it one of her best approach tools as well as one of the best approach tools in the game. And it can even be used for whiff punishment. If you aren't using Party Crasher, you definitely aren't using Julia. Down forward 1 is nothing like a traditional down forward 1. However, its main purpose is to catch opponents ducking and greatly punishing them for doing so. Leaving Julia at plus 14, she's able to get guaranteed follow-ups, as low as 45 damage to 54 or even full combos depending on how confident you are at your execution. It does come with some weaknesses as well, such as poor range, very low rewards if connecting on a standing opponent even on counter hit, and leaving Julia at minus 5, which slows her momentum and limits her defensive options by quite a bit. Down 3 is Julia's main low poke. Being an extremely quick low at 13 frames to start with decent range and tracking, Julia is able to pepper the opponent with down 3s to chip away at their HP bar without risking a lot in the process. It's also Julia's main conditioning tool for getting the opponent to duck and works in tandem with her down forward 1. Shotgun has quite a few applications, much like Party Crasher, and can be used for stagger pressure with this extremely delayable extension, as it allows Julia to enter her spin stance for more plus frames and more mix-ups. The input may look intimidating to new players, but luckily it's bufferable. Magic forwards Julia's main counter-hitting tool. She uses it much like any other character with a generic female Magic 4. Such applications might be as a panic tool, a tracking move, a frame trap, and a keep out tool. It's a core move in Julia's toolbox as it punishes opponents who try to mash when they become impatient or hesitate due to Julia's stagger pressure. Jabs are pretty self-explanatory for any Tekken character, but for Julia specifically, she has several jab strings that she may toy with. However, the most notable one would have to be 1-2 into spin mix, which allows Julia to play a mind game afterwards. These are the top 5 moves that essentially make Julia work. You can win with just these 5 moves alone, if your fundamentals are strong enough, and get extremely far by doing so. It won't be easy by any means, but it'll serve as a strong foundation for building your own playstyle, even if you choose to play in a high risk, high reward fashion. Julia can be played very solidly and compact, although she can be played very recklessly in a high risk, high reward manner as well. I'll be explaining her simple and compact style of play as it's the one I personally use, and it'll be a much more consistent way of not only improving with Julia, but as a player altogether. Party Crasher is one of Julia's most iconic moves, and it's been virtually untouched for roughly 16 years, ever since Tekken 6. Julia's whole game plan stems around forward 1, and it requires quite a bit of attention on both players' parts. After Julia throws up Party Crasher and it gets blocked, she's at -2 and has several options at her disposal. Forward 1-4 is her extension off Party Crasher, and it can be slightly delayed, allowing Julia to get a launch on counter hit, or lots of plus frames, and perfect war jump spacing. However, the opponent can duck this extension as it is a high and launcher accordingly. This may seem like a terrible thing that you never want to do at first, but in reality we can actually manipulate this to our advantage. In Tekken, there's a mind game known as stagger pressure, which in its simplest form is a mix-up between if a move gets finished or not. Like we mentioned before, if Julia finishes forward 1-4, the opponent must duck the high and react to it being finished, then punish her with their while standing launcher. However, if Julia does not finish this extension, she is now mentally plus. The opponent is taking their plus frames after blocking the Party Crasher to duck. Therefore, they're now minus because they wasted their turn ducking for an extension that never came. This allows Julia to do almost anything she wants. Typically, after conditioning them to duck forward 1-4, we can now do down 3 to chip away at them for respecting our stagger pressure. Although throws and even going into full crouch can be viable options as well. On the other hand, if the opponent takes their plus frames and mashes, Julia is at a disadvantage and is easily beaten by moves 12 frames or faster. Don't be discouraged. This isn't a dead end in Julia's game plan. She can actually go back to finishing the extension or opt to go on the defensive and sidestep, backdash, duck, or mash if the opponent uses a move that isn't fast enough to function as a frame trap. This is why Julia requires some specific matchup knowledge, because not every character has a magic 4 to retaliate and get a large reward for interrupting her pressure. Not only that, but stepping after Party Crasher is different for just about every character. For example, if Julia steps left after Party Crasher, she'll make Armor King's down forward 1 whip. Although, the same sequence against Kazumi will not work, so knowing when and what to step, as well as what tendencies our opponent has, is what makes Julia so strong, yet so difficult. Julia has quite a few stances, however, each of them only really has 3 or 4 moves to worry about for mix-ups. Spin is Julia's mix-up stance after 1-2 and shotgun. She may also get into this with while standing 2, however, I wouldn't really recommend using this string, as it requires a large amount of effort to make work, when Julia doesn't really need to complicate things when her mix-ups are already strong as is, therefore making it obsolete. Julia only really wants to use 2 moves out of spin. Spin 1 or low sweep. The mids out of spin are very lackluster and for the most part are just other moves she has from standing, but slightly altered yet functioning in the exact same way. The mix-up off spin on hit is either doing a move out of spin or taking the mental plus frames and mixing from there. Spin high is used as a counter hit launcher, while the low is used to counter opponents who are looking for the mids or try to step. Generally speaking, it's best to take your mental plus frames from spin and either do a mid-low mix like down 3 or down forward 1 or throw. Otherwise, going into full crouch or even further mix-ups is another viable option as well. As mentioned before, Julia can go into full crouch after she's mentally plus off spin for a very intimidating mix-up at the wall. She actually has many different moves to get into full crouch. However, the super secret most effective way to initiate a full crouch mix is by simply running up and ducking. It may seem illogical to just run up and duck, especially in Tekken 7, where 90% of the roster has some sort of mid to delete your HP bar. Taking your mental plus frames off moves or simply running up and ducking insinuates fear into your opponent, making them hesitate to press a button or play the guessing game when, in reality, they could have just used the keep out tool to avoid the situation altogether. You may get counter hit and eat a couple mids here and there, but once you condition the opponent to respect your full crouch mix with Party Crasher and down 3, you're well on your way to creating momentum and forcing your opponent to play into your hands. Now, Swift Step Mix was heavily nerfed due to Julia losing her counter hit property on the low, but it's still possible to mix with Swift Step since you can enter full crouch instead. So in a similar fashion to spin, you're more obligated to go into full crouch and mix from there. Julia only has 2 notable ways to get into Swift Step, those being down forward 2 and forward 3. Down forward 2 is the first hit of Julia's 15 frame launcher. It's also her only decent way into Swift Step using a move. She's at a whopping plus 20 when she enters Swift Stance on hit, and only plus 9 when entering on block. The only 2 moves worth mentioning are Swift Step 2 and Swift Step 4. Julia can do a throw or while standing 1, however, she only has a 1+2 throw from stance, making it obvious what the break is going to be, and while standing 1 is minus 13. Swift Step 2 is a counter hit launcher that also knocks down and wall splats on normal hit. It's got slight pushback, meaning Julia is still able to play keep out if the opponent doesn't immediately take back their turn or uses a move without enough reach to force Julia to block. Swift Step 4 on the other hand is low, and it's one of Julia's only plus on hit lows as well as counter hit knockdowns for a guaranteed follow-up. Since Swift Step low got nerfed, it's much better to condition the opponent to fear Swift Step 2 and enter full crouch while they anticipate the mid. Typically, Julia is using Swift Step the least out of all 3 mix-up opportunities, but that doesn't mean it's not worth using. Julia can enter Swift Step without using a move from neutral, allowing her to jump in at longer ranges to still continue mix-ups. Although, do not get obvious with it at range 3 or 4 because you will get hit by a keep-out move. Thanks for watching this Julia guide. I'm well aware this might be late for a character guide when Tekken 8 is just around the corner. However, I made this video so I can remember a thing or two if she does make it to Tekken 8, or it takes 2 years to make it as a DLC like 7. I also wanted to share the paper cut playstyle of Julia that not a lot of average players make their game plans around, and instead play her as a 50-50 monster when in reality she doesn't have to play like that for the most part. I hope this guide helps at least one person out there, and I truly love this character and hope more people out there do too. Please be sure to party crash that like button, and if you enjoy the content, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope you'll join me on Twitch or Discord for further questions, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Oh, fair, I gotta use a move to do that.
Oh, it's this task bullshit, man.
Damn, dude, damn.
Oh, yeah.
Ah! No way, dude. Just duck. There's no reason.
Yo, clip that shit. That's some task bullshit, man.
Man, that was ugly, bro.